Okay, our interview this afternoon is with Gregory E., Greg Peavy. Greg was born in Biloxi, Mississippi in February of 1966. He served in the United States Army from July of 1984 through September of 2004. His highest rank attained was E7, Sergeant First Class. This interview was conducted at Burleson, Texas on Saturday, September the 10th, 2011. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related in any way to Greg Peavy. Also in the room we have Milton Gibson, who is our videographer. This interview was conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and also for Operation Remember, City of Burleson, Texas. And with that short intro, Greg, you can tell us about your time in the Army, sir.
Well, I would like to start that. Born and raised in Biloxi, Mississippi, at about 1984 when I graduated from high school. During my junior year, I was sent to the cafeteria of the school to take the Army ASVAB test. Had no intentions of joining the military, although I had brothers and sisters that were in the military. My sisters was Air Force and my brother was Air Force Reserve. Okay. Upon that, I was thinking about what was I going to do after high school, and my mother, she was, it was six of us in the family, and I always wanted money in my pocket, you know. And I always thought about if I joined college, I would still have to beg mom for money just to sustain college. So I went into the cafeteria, began taking the test, and with the thought of, I'm not joining no military, this is not going to be for me. But so I went in and I kind of like laid down at the first part of the test, and you know, didn't care about it. And then something just told me, just wake up and just go start answering these questions. And I started answering the questions. Later that year, I'm walking down the hallway, and there was a Sergeant Winston, and he said, "Hey, Peavy." And I turned around, and he said, "Hey, you ever thought about joining the military?" And I looked around, and I said, "No." He said, "Well, what you gonna do when you graduate from high school?" I said, "Well, I thought about going to college." He said, "Do you know that you can go to college and get a military career at the same time?" And I said, "You mean you can give me college and a military career and put money in my pocket?" And I said, "I'm thinking about that." And he said, "Well, won't you come see me?" So I went off to see Sergeant Winston, and we sat down. And before I went and visited with Sergeant Winston, my sister said, "These are the jobs that you should be looking for right here. You know, anything inside, you know, where you can be inside a lot. And you know, I think you would enjoy that because my sister was a supply specialist in the Air Force. So when I went to visit with Sergeant Winston showed me the jobs that I qualified for, and one of them, lo and behold, it was 92 Alpha Logistics, and it was working inside. And I said, "Hey, that's the job I want right there." And he told me, "Just sign here on the dotted line." Went off the basic training in July. I was on a delayed entry program, so it took me probably about maybe 2 or 3 months, and I went off. I graduated in May. So in July, I went off the basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Upon arriving at Fort Knox, Kentucky, man, when I got off that bus, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, it was people coming at me with arms as big as tanks. And it was just like a lot of hollering and yelling, "Let's go, get in place, get in place." And I started thinking right then, what have I got myself into? And I went to, if you know anything about Fort Knox is all artillery. You know, there's no women on the post. You don't even get to see a female, not even smell the perfume of a female. When I got there, it must have been about 101 degrees outside. And I remember when we got off the bus and we went in to get our equipment, on that next day to issue clothing. And that my very horrible event that I remember when we were getting our clothing issued, and I figured out that I didn't get issued my BDU cap. And I was too scared to tell the drill sergeant that, hey, I didn't get my BDU cap. So what I did, I tried to trick the drill sergeant, and he was having each and every soldier hold up everything that they had. So I held up one hat and I tried to switch it to another side to show him that I had two hats, and he caught me. I was about 110 pounds when I went into basic training. And when he caught me, he said, "Get outside now." And I went outside, and he made me pack up everything I had. And I had 2 duffel bags full, and I had one. So he made me put one on the front and one on the back. And he pushed me up, up, down, up, down. And I can tell you this, I've never lied about anything else again. Upon leaving Fort Knox, Kentucky, and they call that agony and misery. If anybody that ever did basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky, it is called agony and misery. Agony and misery are the hills that you have to run to get in shape. Every morning we ran agony and misery. There's also a memorable event. When you come out of the gas chamber at Fort Knox, Kentucky, there's a tree. And it's right at that back door. They take you in the gas chamber, and they exercise, they PT you to death. And when you start doing the jumping jacks, and once you get a little exhausted, he said, "Take off that mask." And when you take off that mask, you go hog-tailing out that back door, not knowing that there's a tree sitting at that back door. And I went hog-tailing out that back door, me and probably 5 other soldiers, and we all hit that tree probably one after another. Bam, bam, bam. And we get up, and we holler, we're screaming, "My eyes are burning, my eyes are burning." But that was a memorable event. Okay, next we got through the basic training thing, and it was just great. It was great. Once we got through basic training, like I said, again, it was hot. We would watch soldiers on the PT field just falling out, and I would see them just hemorrhaging on the ground, and I was thinking, they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me. But I was too much of a man to call Mom and tell her that, you know, I was having a hard time, so I stuck with it. Upon leaving Fort Knox, Kentucky, I came back. They started issuing out our duty station. And my very first duty station, well, I'll say this. First of all, I went to AIT at Fort Lee, Virginia. Back in those days, we still had drill sergeants, so it wasn't any fun there either. But we did get to see a few girls, but we couldn't touch them. So, or get near them. So when I got to Fort Lee, Virginia, it was great. Fort Lee was really nice. Got there, still had drill sergeants. They were wearing the helmet liners. We could at least go to the PX on the weekend if we cleaned up real good and did everything we were supposed to do. After AIT, I received my assignment, and it was Camp Humphreys Career. I went home to see my family, and December 19th, right before Christmas, I went to Camp Humphreys Career. When I first got there, I started thinking again, what in the world have I got myself into? That was, that's like 5 days before Christmas, 6 days before Christmas. And I'm sitting in the room, and I'm hearing these stories once I met once I met the guys in my unit. You can't sit in this room all night by yourself. Their walls will start closing in on you. And I was very, very much homesick. And so I would sit in the room, and every time I would sit in the room, and probably about 30 minutes, I get to thinking about home, that knock would come on the door. "Let's go party, let's go, you can't sit in here, you'll go crazy sitting in here." So these guys, they grabbed me, they take me downtown. It was about 12 of us, and they would take care of me all while I was there. And for long, I stopped calling home. My mom started worrying about me. I wasn't calling home as much. Well, I had found a family. The military was great for me. We will go out Monday through Sunday, have a good time, party, come back in on Monday, and our first sergeant, he would run it out of me, okay? We run. And if you were at the back of the formation, you smell everything. You see everything and smell everything, and people just throwing up all over the place. But that became our ritual for about 6 months straight, and then finally I said, I can't do this no more. I need to get in shape and stay in shape. My next duty station after leaving Camp Humphreys Career, I came home. First of all, I came home, and I married my high school sweetheart, okay? And we went on to Fort Hood, Texas. I stayed at Fort Hood, Texas for about 2 years, and then I received orders to go to Stuttgart, Germany. Very nice assignment. Told my high school sweetheart, we didn't have money to go on a honeymoon, so I said the Army is paying for our honeymoon. So we went on to Stuttgart, Germany. We loved it. Great place, great place. Stuttgart was nice. Got there in about we got the year 1987. Great place. I mean, I had my daughter. My wife was pregnant with my daughter then, and had my daughter over there, and we just had a great time. We left Stuttgart, Germany in 1990. I left Stuttgart, Germany. At 1990, being in Stuttgart, Germany, I'm out there, me and my wife, we out there just partying in the club, and the lights come on in the club and says, there's been a calling to go to Desert Storm, Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And if you're on PCS order, at the time I was on PCS order to Fort Hood, Texas, we will not stop your PCS. You will continue the PCS. So they were telling everybody in the club, you need to right now report to your duty. You report to your, well, we were at a base, report to the base. So I got to the base to find out what was going on. I dropped my wife at the house. I went to the base, found out what was going on. And when I got to the base, they were telling me just what we heard on the radio at the club, that, hey, you will continue the PCS. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm not going anywhere. I'll just go to Fort Hood and relax. Soon as I got to Fort Hood, my wife and I got to Fort Hood, we didn't even get our household goods. And I go to my assignment, and they said, you know that you're getting ready to deploy. You're getting ready to deploy to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. And so I was like, what? I don't even have household goods. And so, well, you got to get ready to deploy. So I had to come home that evening and tell my wife that I was getting ready to deploy to Saudi Arabia. So I came home and told my wife, and she was, what? You're going off to war? And I was like, yeah, I gotta go. And I said, but first they want to take me through a series of sustainment training. So I started going through the training, and it was about a month, and they kept asking me, you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? And I wasn't ready at the time, and I was like, no. I still had one more training piece to do, and that was the gas chamber. So I have to admit, I was stalling a little bit. And then finally I came home and I told my wife, I said, you know what? I'm ready. I'm just going to go ahead and get on that plane and go ahead and get on that manifest so I can go and get it over with. So I came home, and my next door neighbor, he was a tanker, and he hadn't received orders yet. And when I came home and I sat down with his wife and my wife and told them, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and let them know that I'm ready to go. And he's like, what? My next door neighbor, he was a tanker, was like, what? You're going over there before me and I'm a tanker and you're a logistic guy? No, I can't let this happen. So I went and told my wife, went back, and my manifest was leaving in 24 hours. Okay, so I had to stay on the base, so I couldn't come back home. So I waited on my manifest to leave, and my wife told my neighbor that I was leaving. So when he found out that I was going, and I was a logistic guy, and he was a tanker, he wasn't going. He went and volunteered to go. Well, his wife told him, she said, well, I tell you what, if you die, I'm going to come up to the casket and I'm going to punch you dead in the face because you didn't have to go. You didn't have to go because he was going. So, and that was funny. So I went on off to Desert Storm, Desert Shield. When I got there, landed in Saudi Arabia, and they opened the doors of that plane. When they opened the doors of that plane open, I was like, what in the world? It seemed like the heat just grabbed everybody on the plane and just snatched you out of there. That's how hot it was. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these turbines running around, and I'm like, what is going on? And so I get off the plane and they have us walk to this big hangar. I guess that was the in-processing station. And we in process, and I stayed there. And they had the big TVs, big flat screen TVs, and all you seen was CNN and Saddam and Bush, and it was just going back and forth about the war. So I was there for about 2 days until my unit, they were already there. They were in the desert. They were already there. So I sat there for about 2 days wondering, is anybody coming to get me or what? Am I going to be here for the whole duration? So I looked up, and that was this captain, and a lieutenant was with him. And he said, Sergeant Peavy, he said, you're coming with us. He said, and I was like, well, where are we going? He said, well, we'll set up in the desert right now about 2 hours from the border. And so we're going to grab your things, and you're going to be coming with us. I was going to a area called 597 Maintenance Company. That was my unit, 597 Maintenance Company, under 13 COSCOM Sustainment Command. We were supporting 1st Cab. Every time 1st Cab moved, we would move right behind them. At the time that I got there, they told me that we hadn't really jumped yet. But about a week after I got there, 1st Cab began moving. I guess the battle was getting close to battle time. 1st Cab began moving. We would move. Every time we would move, we would dig in 300 sandbag, and it seems like every time I got to that 299 sandbag, it was like, pull them all out, let's go, let's move again. And I was just sitting out there thinking, it was 125 degrees, and I was like, what in the world are we doing? So we would pour the sandbags out, and we jumped, we moved. Finally, we got to the 3rd move, and that was 30 miles from the border of Iraq. And it seemed like everything calmed down. We began to dig in. We started digging in the fighting positions. We started putting up the tents, and we started getting dug in and everything, and we started setting out the chemical alarms and all of those things. And we got there, we set up, and the showers started coming in. We started building the showers, and when later we started getting the AFES trucks would come in and bring the snacks and the radios and all that stuff. All while we were there, the unit was kind of like unstable because no one had been in an environment like that before. And some of the people in the command, they would start arguing. The biggest thing that we argued about was the life-threatening detail, and that was the burning of poo-poo, okay? And it was like officers against the enlisted, and they had put out that everybody would burn poo-poo, okay? And that was what I'm talking about. That's the field sanitation piece where we would go to the restroom, and at the morning of the day, there would be a detail to pull out the little half-barrel cans, pull it out, pour gasoline in it, stir it up, pour diesel in it, and you watch it lit up and fire up and burn till it was all gone, and then you would push them back under for the next day. Well, at that time, it kind of got hot because the officer was like, well, we're not doing it. And the enlisted was like, well, we're not going to burn your poo-poo, and you not burn ours. So it began an uproar until somebody finally came down and said, everybody, it's a life-threatening detail, and everybody would do it. So we finally got that all ironed out, and we began to stay there and, you know, we'll have little formations in the morning and everything, and things start calming down a little bit until I was on an MST team. I was a part of the MST team where you go out and you support whatever mechanic team that was going behind the tankers to help them out. Well, at that time, they asked me, they said, Sergeant Peavy, would you like to go with the contact team, and we'll be going into Iraq? And I was honest with him. I said, do I got a choice? And he said, yeah, you got a choice. You can go or not go. I said, well, I'll stay here and I'll support the rear, you know. He said, well, you can go if you want to go. I said, no, I'll just stay here and I'll support it from the rear. Okay, so we had about maybe a 53-man team that would go in and follow all of the 1st Cavalry Division all the way into Iraq, and I stayed at the rear of that echelon at the border at the 30-mile mark, and I would just push parts in. Well, we had to jump one more time, and that was about 15 miles to the border, and I jumped with those guys. And at that time, I remember that night firing up that deuce and a half, and I remember this E4, he was with me. And he asked, he said, Sergeant Peavy, are you scared? And I said, yeah, I'm scared. I said, you scared? He said, I am too. So we started driving up toward the 15-mile mark, and my clutch went out in a deuce and a half. Now, think about it now. We had a basic load with us, but the basic load was not with us. It was with the E7. I remember his name was Sergeant First Class Torres. And my vehicle broke down. And Sergeant Torres came back to me. He said, Sergeant Peavy, here's what we're going to have to do. You're going to have to drive all the way back. And we're going to keep going. I said, you're going to make me drive all the way back? And I said, well, I don't have a problem with that. I said, but you're going to give me some of that basic load to drive back? And he was like, Commander's orders, I can't give it to you. I was like, what? So I began to, get loud with him. You crazy. You're going to have us drive all the way back with no basic load. He said, I can't give it to you, Sergeant Peavy. So upon his orders, I took his orders. We jumped in the vehicle. We couldn't see. It was so dark and foggy, we could not see not even half a car in front of us. So what I had to do, I had to get out of the deuce and a half and kind of like with my flashlight, ground guide the driver. Well, as we were driving back, we didn't know whether they were Iraqis or Saudis, but this van pulls up real fast on us, and we couldn't understand a word they were saying, but we knew that they were pointing like at the truck, and I believe they wanted to help us, but we were so scared. We was like, just go, just get away from us, just get away from us, just get away from us. We're good. So we finally, after about at least 15 minutes, I guess those guys finally got to the point we didn't want any help from them because we were so scared. And we finally made it back, and when we made it back to the campsite, we slept in the truck till that next morning. But that was one of my scariest events. Upon completing Desert Storm, Desert Shield, to me, that was one of the scariest events because we would hear the chemical alarms going off all the time. But, with chemicals, you can't see it and you can't tell it was coming, but it would go off all the time. And I remember one night walking back from the shower point and this big boom, it was the loudest boom I ever heard. And it was, I know we had not shot down one of the Scuds. And when he hit it, it was just like boom. And chemical alarms was just going off everywhere. And boy, we just started running and running. It was like, get to cover. So we went inside. We had, in the middle of where we were camped in our campsite, we had bunkers already dug where we will fit at least 15 of us in one bunker. So we went to the bunker, and we must have stayed in there for about 2 hours. And we stayed in there until the all clear sign, so we came out. When we came out, still we couldn't see anything. The chemical alarms had calmed down, and we went on with the mission. And about April, I believe, we left Desert Storm after we had to clean all the vehicles and everything, and we came back to Fort Hood. It was a great welcome. We had a big parade. Everybody was on the side of the road welcoming us back. Great. It was just great. When I finally got back to my family and got all settled and everything, still, you still bring some of that stuff back home with you, the war, what you go through, and everything. But I was able to manage pretty well. After it was all over, I had told everybody had told each other, we're getting out. I'm not doing another year. I can't wait till I get back. We all gonna get out. Yeah, we had made deals, and most of us would get out together and everything. Well, I ended up re-enlisting for 5 more years. So that 5 years took me into another tour of Germany. I went back to another tour of Germany, and I also did a tour of Korea, which brought me, did Korea, and then which brought me to, came home one day, and I asked my wife after I got to Korea, I said, well, I always wanted to go to Hawaii. And they said the best time to get it was when you were already overseas. So I called up my branch manager, and she said, hey, Sergeant Peavy. She said, what do you want? And I said, I want Hawaii. And I said, can I get it? She said, you call me back in about 2 weeks, and I can have it for you. So I called my branch manager up in about 2 weeks, and she got me Hawaii. I came home and told my family, said, we're going to Hawaii. They were so happy. 45th group. I arrived in Hawaii in 1999. We got to Hawaii. Stayed there 3 years. I wanted to stay there 4, but the school system was so bad for my kids, I had to leave. They were still using books with Jimmy Carter in there. So, and when I would go up to the school, it was like my kids were just sitting in the room doing nothing. So after 1999, I PCS from Hawaii, and I came here to Fort Worth, Texas, and I was in charge. I was assigned to an ACRC assignment where by that time, that's when we had Iraqi freedom was about to kick off, and my job was to train the reservists and National Guard to go over to Iraq. And I did that for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, and one of the guys that was one of my friends, he retired a year before I did and found out about the JROTC teaching assignment, and he went and told one of the guys about me. And the guy came and interviewed me and said, I like what I see, and would you come here to Fort Worth, and would you like working in the middle school teaching JROTC? And here I am. Loved it. I thought it was exciting. It's still exciting to me. It's something that you see your product every day. And the military, my tour of the military was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I still tell people now, I would do another 20 years. Military, I mean, the support of the military, coming from a town, place like Gulfport, Mississippi, where I watched my family go through a lot of racial tension, and then to join the military where you see all races come together as one. That was one of the biggest thrills that I've received from the military. And even now, to walk along amongst my veterans, and we all are just brothers and sisters in arms. I say all the time, it was the greatest thing that just ever happened to me, and it was the greatest thing just to see like I said, my mother and father endure a lot, and then for me to get in and be able to be around all walks of life, cultures, and just become one band, one big arm. So I will, anybody that say anything negative about the military, I will always be in support of them. It was a great adventure, and it still is a great adventure for
me. Excuse me. Army took you to a lot of places, certainly Saudi Arabia and all those places with lots of sand.
Right.
But you also spent a lot of time in Germany.
Right.
You had a couple tours in Korea, one tour in Hawaii.
Right.
What was the best duty station you ever had?
I would say Germany. Germany, the people in Germany, they are so nice. They just welcomed us with open arms, even when you walked along the plaza. I think it's because Germany also is one of the few countries that when their kids graduate from high school, they have to do military. They have to go into military for about 2 to 3 years. I believe that this country should do that, Their kids are so well mannered. Over there, I could leave my car unlocked, my doors unlocked, never had any problems. And the respect there is just the utmost respect.
I didn't realize that Germany had military, the universal military training.
Right.
Israelis do.
Mm-hmm.
If that was your best duty station, other than Desert Storm and all that stuff, what was the worst place you ever went?
Man, I tell people all the time, I don't think I had a bad place. Now, I'll tell people, they say, when have you ever worked the hardest? I say, I can count them on my fingers. I probably worked hard like 3 times, and that was all those jumps in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, filling all those sandbags. But to be honest with you, I didn't have a bad duty station. Korea, I love Korea too.
You spent both summer and winter in Korea and in Germany?
Yes, both summer and winter.
Winter a little tough in both those places?
Winter, the toughest winter is in Korea. It's a wet cold. And when it is cold in Korea, it feels like your fingers are just going to fall off, when I first got there in 1984, 1999 was a little bit better, but when I got there in 1984, we had to wait until at least 12 o'clock to start working because it was so cold, the heaters would freeze up. So we sit there and try with blankets and just trying to warm up until 12 o'clock where we can get a day's work in. And by the time 12 o'clock got there, you start work at 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock was there just like that.
You take your family to all those overseas duties?
Now, my wife did not go with me the first time to Korea in 1984, but in the second time I went to Korea, where I was stationed, they allowed me to bring her over. Her and my youngest son came to Korea, and they enjoyed it.
You live on base?
We lived on. I had signed a note. My commander, he was just great. I had my own barracks. All E6s, I was E6 then, all E6s and above had their own living quarters. And you could bring your family over by him signing a memorandum, which allowed your family to come over and they can live right with you in the barracks. So my wife came over for about 3 months and lived with me in the barracks.
In the barracks?
In the barracks.
Wow. Greg, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to come visit today.
Awesome.
Appreciate your 20 years of service and what you're doing today yet. Obviously, you enjoy working with the kids you work with and helping them get along maybe toward a military career.
Love it.
But